guy you're going to count on certain routes. There's certain things that, in the past 2 years, there's certain things I think Trevor would say, I want Zay Jones out there. I want him on these routes. And now, without someone like Zay, you're looking at it and say, okay, who's going to be that guy in that role? And that's what training camp and the offseason program force. But I think it's a lot easier now for Trevor to kind of, knowing the system and knowing the progressions of everything and having played against a number of different coordinators and actually the guys he's playing against, of looking at things and saying now, okay, having been in the league for 3 years now, I could say, okay, these are matchups I think that I would say, okay, hey, Mike, or talking to press, hey, let's maybe let's run it out of this formation because I think this player we match up well against. And I think that's getting better and learning about a system and growing up with experience is really going to help him.
One more, if you don't mind. You've called plays and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How the time that thing starts to happen from after the next play to when the ball's snapped, how much goes on in that time frame, and how precise is all that time to avoid delay of games or organizational problems?
Well, I think that all goes into game planning. I think you spend so much time during the week, as a coaching staff putting a plan together, as players studying that plan, and I think up to Saturday night when we were in the meetings with the quarterbacks, with coach, with press, and the people that are in that room, we kind of go over situational things again. Whether it's sometime Friday, whether it's Saturday, kind of putting the third down red area plays in order as whether it's the play caller, whether it's the quarterback, kind of how we like things, just kind of going over things. So a lot of those things, those decisions are all made during the week. But then there's going to be an adjustment during the game. You're going to play a team, depending on how the game's going, whether you're going up and down the field, will they make changes, or maybe as an offense you're not playing as well as you want to. You get back to the basics. You might change some things. There's always, every game, there's something that comes up at halftime where we might add a play or two here and there. So that's the game of football. That's what we do as coaches and players. You adjust, and there's more conversation, I would say, in between series about, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing the next series. Here's the first play or two we might run, and I think we do a pretty good job of communicating what's the next third down call going to be, things like that. But there's not a ton of discussion because you don't have a lot of time in between plays. As the next play's over, the whistle's blown, you're moving on, and I think the press has done a great job of giving him the plays as quickly as possible. And there are some plays that are long, and that's sometimes where you run into a problem where it might be a check. Where you want to run up a certain play versus certain coverage, and then there's another tag to it. Get down in the lower red area sometimes, or it's a bigger play. Sometimes it takes. People don't understand that sometimes that there's an explosive play, so it takes the players longer, the offensive linemen, to get down there, and then all of a sudden there's a long play call, and maybe it's a shift in emotion, something like that comes up, or defense, sometimes they're lined up wrong. So Trevor might be sitting there waiting for them to get lined up, and then the clock starts running down. So it's never perfect.
They're still transitioning into the system, but generally speaking, what are your impressions of Trevor's supporting cast now? The three receiver additions, Gabe and Brian and Devin, Mitch at center too, the value of an experienced guy there.
Yeah, it's been fun, and I think the way coaches set up the offseason program, it gives us a number of different opportunities to kind of work those guys in. And there's a ton of individual time that we have to just run individual routes, and then whether it's the meetings and the conversations the players have, it's the game today. Every offseason there's a number of new players that come into your organization, so you got to spend as much time with them to get on the same page. And then that's really what for training camp, because right now we're out there practicing, but it's not. It's football, don't get me wrong, but it's not full speed. We're not in pads. It's just really getting to know one another and, just touching up on some things, cleaning up on some things, working on some ideas that we might have had, some new wrinkles we want to put in, and really just teaching the new guys the system, and then clean up maybe some little details that we want to improve on from last year.
Another new guy, what's more like getting to know Mac Jones.
Mm-hmm.
what are your early impressions of him?
I think Mac's done a great job. All three quarterbacks in there. I'm very fortunate to have the quarterback room that I have with Trevor, CJ, and Mac. They've done a great job of, coming together as one in that room, because we're going to spend a lot of time in there together. And I think, Trevor and CJ deserve a lot of credit for helping Mac learn the system and helping him any way they can. And he's done a great job. He's, having a lot of fun out there. I think all three guys, we like to have fun around here and, just help each other out and do whatever we can. But he's really done a nice job of picking up the system. And, he's played a lot of football. So it's not like this is a new game for him playing at this level. So that there's nothing like experience. So, what he's done the first couple of years in his career, being able to play the number of games he has, that helps. And it really was just, the big thing for him is just learning terminology.
Mike, Press has said that the offense was ripped down to the studs when it came to designing the offense for this year. How would you describe coming out of last year to where you guys currently stand?
Well, I think every offseason you go down, you look at your system, you evaluate it, you look at the pluses and minuses. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. You always strive for perfection, and there's things that you look, your team changes from year to year. Some things you look at one year, you might look at the 2022 season and say these things were unbelievable, and then you look at last year and you say maybe we didn't execute these things as well, or there's some things that you flip it the other way. Some things in 2022 you look at and you might say we weren't very good at, and then we were better at this year. So that's every offseason. You really break it down, you look at it, and then but. That stuff you learn from, but then you figure out, okay, moving forward, what type of team we want to be. You bring in new players, whether it's through draft, free agency. There's always going to be changes on the roster, and that's the fun part about the offseason. And then the game of football at times is a game of thievery. You look around the league, whether it's during the season, whether it's an off-season program, you look at some things and say, hey, here's the offenses, and you look at them, you kind of see some things they did. And you got to look at it and say, okay, does our personnel, can we run some of those things? So that's what we're doing now. Is you put a couple new wrinkles in, and you get in training camp, and you find out, what do our players do best, and that's the great part about the offseason program.
Like you said, you're still in t-shirts and shorts.
Yeah.
Does it feel like, in terms of the skill set of the wide receivers, does it feel like the scouting department, Trent, the front office, made a conscious effort to identify receivers who are similar to what Trevor had when he was in college?
Yeah, well, you always do. Every year, I think our personnel department and the coaching staff have done a great job really defining, what type of team we want, what kind of players we want. And I think Trent and his staff do a phenomenal job, whether it's free agency, through its draft, whether it's re-signing our own players, of going out there and define, okay, this is where we are after the season's over. Okay, here's the guys we'd like to bring back if we can, and you're not always going to get all of them. There is a salary cap, and you can only sign so many people back, and guys leave for different reasons, and then you get in the draft, and you try to, whether it's through free agency or the draft, you fit your needs, and I think from a personnel department, you're trying to always improve your football team, and then as coaches, we try to put our players in a position to be successful. And it's just like during the season, there's going to be some injuries that come up. You got to move guys around, but that's what this time of the year is for. It's, it's June now, and we don't kick off officially till September to a true game. So you just continue to build your roster and try to get the best guys out there and fly around.
The quarterback has some protection issues.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
The clock in the head speeds up. Is it easy for that clock to get slowed down again? You know what I mean? Maybe I'm not phrasing it right.
No, I understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
I think every play is different. The success of whether, if you want to say, does your clock go off? Well, certain times you might be looking down at a receiver and maybe he's held up. Maybe a DB grabs onto him. Maybe a guy slips. Maybe there might be a miscommunication up front on a protection scheme, which it rarely, in the last 2 years, there aren't many of those, I must say. The line and the backs and Trevor have done a phenomenal job of communicating. There might be a route breakdown, There's a number of things that go into every play. So I wouldn't always say it's protection and a time clock. There's sometimes there's a quarterback, there's the other side of it. Sometimes he comes off a progression too quick. So there's a number of different reasons in every play of why it's a plus or it's a minus.
With as close as you are to Trevor, was it hard to watch him go through injury after injury last season?
That's the tough part of the game. It's unfortunate. We understand that. And a couple of the injuries you have, it's all part of the game. You know, if you get rolled up on certain things, you can't do anything about that. But like I mentioned earlier, with one of the first questions I asked, you give Trevor a ton of credit for what he played through. It's not easy when you're not practicing a lot to go out and play, but he understands what it means to play and be with his teammates and what his teammates mean to him. So give him all the credit in the world for what he fought through, and go out there and do whatever he can do to be the best Trevor he can be from week to week.
How unfair was it for Trevor to be tagged as the generational prospect? Because that's sort of maybe how a lot of people view his first 3 years or whatever, and maybe they're like, he's not living up to, you know what I mean? And getting some criticism from that, from a tag he didn't put on himself, you know what I mean?
Trevor's just trying to go out and be the best Trevor week in and week. You can't worry about all that. I mean, you know, I'm very. No, and that's a great thing. You know, I've coached two of the best to ever play the game, and so you look at the early years in their careers. It's never easy as a young player to come in the league, and there's going to be ups and downs, and it's part of playing the position. It's not you're just not playing. You got to know what everybody's doing. And, you know, the supporting cast around you, they've got to play at a certain level too. So, but he deserves, you know, I think with what he did in college, there's a reason why everyone said what you said. And, you know, he's a very talented player, and he's got a very, very bright future, and he's only going to get better with time, and there's nothing like experience in this league.
Doug said he learned under Mike McCoy, quarterback 3, 4,
Yeah.
even more years.
Yeah.
In this day and age, no one has patience for that, though, right?
That's the business we're in today. It's you know, I've been in it since 2000. It's changed, and there's a lot of pressure, you know, on everybody to go out and win and, you know, play at a certain level week in and week out. And that's. But the great thing about the three guys in my room is they all understand it. They understand what it means to play quarterback in this league and to be the face of the franchise. The quarterbacks, they get way too much credit when they win and way too much credit when they lose. And people don't always understand, you know, why certain decisions are made. And everyone wants to look at a stat sheet at the end of the year after a game, and you got to really analyze it and look at it and say, okay, this is why certain interceptions happen, or this is why you get a certain completion percentage or yards. You know, sometimes you want to say this and that about yards, and it's like, well, what are you trying to? It's all about winning. You're trying to go out and win football games week in and week out.
Now, from year 3 to year 4, what's the improvement you'd like to see from him?
Well, I think if you see what he's done out there, this offseason program, he's done a phenomenal job of running the show. And I think his biggest thing this offseason was really getting to know his new teammates. I think you could see the progress he made the last 2 years in our system, and just how comfortable he was of doing, you know, running the show last year and getting us in and out of plays. And the big thing is the key this offseason was really with the new players, of just really learning, you know, how, you know, and just really talking with these guys on how he wants them to run routes, and you know, certain adjustments he's going to make, and little things we've worked on, you know, that we've talked about, you know, how he can play better, you know, come up this year.
Doug talked a little bit about kind of making that transition for Trevor of going from learning, but now he's practicing, right? He knows it like the back of his hand, which is what you want in a quarterback. Do you feel he's made that jump effectively, and he can kind of become that person that when anybody else comes to him, he already knows what's going on?
Yeah, Trevor's really, I mean, all the quarterbacks I think have done a great job this offseason. You know, obviously CJ and Trevor have been in it from day one with us, but Trevor's done a phenomenal job of just really going out there and, you know, leading the team. And it's the more you play in the same system with the same teammates, it's a lot easier to go out there. You know, the first year you look at it and it's, you know, you're learning the system, and you may not be executing it like, you know, in the offseason. You look at the first offseason program and you want to say certain things, but you might be making a few mistakes and you're not comfortable, or you may not be sure of all the little details of everything because you're still learning. And now you look at the year 3, and now he's like another coach on the field. And you see him really, whether it's in meetings or maybe it just be sitting downstairs in a general conversation, something comes up with somebody, whether it's sitting down eating, someone might come up and ask a question, and it's just so easy for him to spit out the answer. And that's the way it's been, through practice. If a formation might come up and he might say something to press about, hey, can I run it out of this? And it's just so easy for him to change because he may want to see Gabe run a certain route instead of he might know how Christian runs this route, so he wants to switch him to learn just to kind of see how his new teammate runs it. And it's been great to see.